Very good find there, but how about that one?
Here's Paul George, up and under. George got it.
Somehow he got it.
Hollis Jefferson trying to guard him. George. Oh, it goes for Paul George. George using the screen set by Turner. Lopez there trailing on defense, and George still creates a deuce. George forces his way to the bucket and scores.
Yeah, you really have to with Paul George. You got to get in front of him and at least slow him down.
George crossing over, and that is special. George using the screen from Turner, and he sticks it. George, the crossover, the fend-off, and the bucket.
Paul George, nowhere to go against Butler. Nice move, fake.
Nice move. Used his dribble. He picked his dribble up, but he was able to do a good job of pivoting. There's Paul George answering at the other end.
Here's Paul George, throws it down.
Really nice job in avoiding Larry Nance Jr., who he knows can jump.
Paul George goes to work. And he creates and puts up a shot. And now here's Paul fading, scoring. PG again.
Well, because he's got D'Angelo Russell. Then don't even wait to do anything.
Here's Paul George, two more.
Monte Ellis too quick for his own good, but he finds Paul George. He's still a smart player, that Monte Ellis.
As Paul George gets inside, and he has 9. George against Stauskas, and Paul George has an 11-point quarter. And the jump shot good by George, second of the quarter. Pacers get the steal again, and here's George. Dunks it! Boy, he took off from what looked outside the lane.
Paul's going to try to get to the corner. That's a drive.
George hits it. Tied. Here comes George. Steps through and dunks it.
This is his side.
Works against Henderson, and Paul George delivers again.
George Ilyasova thought about taking the charge, and Paul George just kind of Euro stepped around him. George, healthy three, and he buried it. Wow. And Holmes came out to check him.
And that's a 3. Paul George gets one to go.
Great move there. How about that blow by speed?
So 20 seconds to go, 7 on the shot clock. George is throwing up a prayer, and he banks it in.
And now George puts up a tough shot, got it, and a chance for a 3-point play.
A big rebound here.
Yes. George dunks it.
Pacers have it. Paul George has got 5. Paul George from the elbow. George working against Bellinelli. That's a big-time shot.
That's Paul George, and that's perfect. 3 on the shot clock. George with a deep triple.
Oh boy, you could see that coming.
Stop and go move by Paul George. That looked easy, didn't
Sure did. I thought he was going to fire from 15 feet away, but he says I can get a little bit more.
3 on the 24 for George. Doesn't matter. He drains it. From Turner. George with a shot, sticks it.
Wow. Again, his ability to dribble.
George jump stopper. Swish.
I think he has done that on at least 4 different defenders for the Pistons.
Paul George with a step back gun that goes. Numbers show he has 11 and 8 assists. To the rim on the other end. Nice pump fake, and he fires and fills it.
That hurt.
Paul George gets inside, and he draws the foul. Got a brand new shot clock here. Step back, George!
That's one of those no good shots there.
3-time All-Stars work against each other. George on the baseline.
Got him again. Because he's got size.
Elbow from George, he rolls it in. And then poked away, and Paul George is on the run. Paul George running in and scores it. Here's George, he's open, firing and scoring. Paul George against Jimmy Butler. George wheels, hangs, fires, scores.
Big bucket. George has Reggie on him. There's the turn and gun, rips the net. 10 already for Paul George. George over John Lure, fires it, fills it up. Paul George to the lane. Triple teamed and somehow scored. Paul George with a screen from Turner. Sees some daylight, gets to the lane, drains the deuce, and draws the foul.
The Euro step for Paul George going to the hole.
So easy at times when you watch him play.
Step back, Paul George, yes. Back door, George elevating for the jam.
Oh, big time dunk by George. My goodness, no way. Turnover, George. Oh boy, this thing is unraveling right in front of your eyes. Paul George, 1-point game.
George working his way inside against Wiggins and able to connect. Paul George dropping it through.
2 seconds, George. Oh, wow. Up top, George He'll go to work. He's fouled, and it counts.
He's a heck of a player.
Step back jumper. Indiana has the lead.
Out of the timeout, George scores at the rim. Spinning is George. The bank to beat the buzzer. George attacks. That was pretty explosive.
That might be the definition of explosive. George going to pull back. Robertson stays with him, but George, that is one where you just got to tip your cap because he was really well defended. Indiana has missed its last 5 shots, but George takes care of that.
Here's John Wall.
Look out. Look out.
Boy, he is a blur going baseline to baseline, knocked out of bounds. Paul George stops the run.
You're going to put a guard on me. I'm going to take you right to the rim, and that's exactly what Paul George is saying.
Paul George stepping back on Tabo.
He's on it
Silky
tonight.
smooth. Well, they get the switch, and he just blows right by Schroeder.
Yes.
Paul George coming down. Bazemore picks him up this time off the screen. Basket counts.
That your patients can just get any positive feedback here on this last possession that they can take it to the locker room. As Paul George knocks that basket down.
Paul George fouled, count the basket. A 3-point chance for Paul George.
George over Waiters. He has 16. Paul George turns the corner. And Whiteside backpedaling. 5 on the shot clock for the Pacers. This is Paul George from 20 feet out. Well, he got it to the right guy with a shot clock dwindling.
Paul George hangs long enough in the air to hit the shot. Paul George, that's a 3, and he's fouled.
He'll turn and pump up a jumper for 2.
Tough play.
7 to shoot. George against Hayward. George rises, shoots, and hits.
To get it in George's hands. He lays it down nicely for an easy 2. Final 10 seconds of the quarter. George, Crowder defending. George pulls up, knocks it down. A good play by Allen. George with the finish.
And right by Gallinari goes Paul George.
Indiana has it with George. He's going to take it right to the rim with a left hand, and the Pacers end the quarter on a 10-0 run.
And one.
George splits the defenders, gets to the cup, scoops it in.
George in the corner against Patterson.
Well, that's tough when you're in that corner because you can get pinched there. He's just good enough he can make a shot.
A 3 for the second time tonight for Paul George. George tossed it up and in.
He just made up a shot. He had to.
Now George, step back, got it. George drives and scores in the foul.
That's got to play.
George on a thumper. Wow. George kept it back. Settles for one and splashed it. Paul George wants it. Losing J.R. Smith, and he hit it. Paul George, one-on-one challenge for LeBron James. George created space. Oh, and he got it to go. Here comes Paul George against Kevin Love. Man at the top, still finished it. George sends it, hits it. Gunslinger 3 for Paul George. Paul George spins away, sends it. Oh, how huge has he been down the stretch? He's got 40.
And George inside for 2.
Did a really nice job.
And George with a tough shot on the left side with a right hand. Ahead now to George. George is going to pound it home.
Really good job by the Pacers.
George.
Oh, really good
Here's a
by
step
Paul.
back 3. George hits it. Here's George. He made it and drew the foul. Count the 3. George splits the defense and only puts it through.
George again. Middleton felt he was dumped. Paul George on a tear here.
Ross matched up against George. Short jumper is good by Paul George. George bouncing off of Fournier, and a foul is called on Evan. Thaddeus Young the rebound. George with a cut to the rim, hammers it down.
On the cut, Paul George. Hands it over to Miles Turner for the jam. On to Paul George. Dives in, gets fouled, throws it in. Are they going to give a continuation? Yes. Paul George fires and hits a 3. He has flat out taken over this game.